December 8, 1970. Washington, D.C., CIA headquarters, Langley, Virginia. A file lands on a metal desk. Thick, heavy, worn edges. The label reads, Presley Elvis Aaron. Classification, confidential. Inside, 347 pages. Photographs, transcripts, flight records, bank statements, hotel registrations, witness testimonies. 15 years of surveillance. Every move, every meeting, every phone call. The question tonight is not whether the CIA watched Elvis Presley. They did. The question is why. Why would the Central Intelligence Agency dedicate resources, agents, and years to monitoring a singer? What did they believe he was doing? What did they find? And most importantly, what was in those declassified files that the government kept hidden for decades? Tonight we uncover the truth. But there's something you need to understand first. The surveillance didn't start because Elvis was famous. It started because of something he did in 1960, something that made him a person of interest, not to fans, to the federal government. And when you discover what triggered the watch, everything you thought you knew about Elvis Presley will shift. By the end of this story, you'll understand why some secrets are buried for 30 years, why certain pages in the files are still redacted, and why one CIA agent who monitored Elvis for 7 years never spoke about it until days before his death. Quick thought. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, even when you were alone? Drop a comment. This is the story of Elvis Presley and the CIA. A story told through declassified documents, testimony, and the cold reality of government surveillance. Let's begin. January 1960, Frankfurt, Germany. Elvis Presley, U.S. Army Specialist. Serial number 533100761. He's stationed at Ray Barracks, Friedberg, a small military base 50 kilometers from Frankfurt. Elvis has been in Germany for 2 years. Serving his country, doing his duty. The press covers it like a fairy tale. America's biggest star becomes a regular soldier. No special treatment. Sleeps in barracks. Drives a jeep. Eats in the mess hall. The public loves it. But behind closed doors, something else is happening. Something the Army notices. Something they report. Elvis receives visitors. Not family, not friends from Memphis. Foreign nationals. Men from East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, countries behind the Iron Curtain, communist territories. This is 1960, the height of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall will go up in 1 year. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 2. The world is divided. East versus West. Democracy versus communism. And here's Elvis Presley, America's golden boy, meeting with men from the other side. The Army reports it. Standard protocol. The report lands on a desk at military intelligence. Then it moves up to the Department of Defense, then to the CIA. Someone decides, this needs watching. Not because they believe Elvis is a spy, not because they think he's a traitor, but because in 1960, anyone with ties to communist nations is a potential vulnerability, a pressure point, a target for recruitment. The Soviets are good at this. They identify celebrities, politicians, businessmen, people with influence, people with access. They approach them carefully, subtly, offer friendship, money, information, and sometimes those people say yes. The CIA cannot risk Elvis Presley becoming one of them, so they open a file. February 14, 1960. The first surveillance report is filed. Subject, Elvis Aaron Presley. Location, Friedberg, West Germany. Agent assigned, redacted. The report is 3 pages, typewritten, single-spaced. It documents Elvis's activities over 7 days, who he meets, where he goes, what time he returns to base. The meetings with foreign nationals are listed, names, nationalities, duration of contact. The report concludes. Subject shows no signs of disloyalty or subversive activity. Recommend continued observation. Translation. Keep watching. This report is the first of hundreds. For the next 15 years, Elvis Presley is watched. Not every day, not every moment, but regularly, strategically, wherever there's a reason. The CIA doesn't announce this. Elvis doesn't know. The public doesn't know. It's classified. And it stays that way until 1992, 32 years later, when the files are finally declassified under the Freedom of Information Act, and the world learns what the CIA knew about Elvis all along. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back. March 1960. Elvis is still in Germany. One of the foreign nationals he meets is a man named Hans Müller, real name, redacted in the files. Age 38, nationality, East German. Occupation, journalist. Müller approaches Elvis at a restaurant in Frankfurt. He's polite, speaks English well. Says he's writing an article for a European magazine. Can he interview Elvis? Elvis agrees. They sit for 2 hours. Müller asks questions about Elvis's music, his movies, his time in the army. Then he asks other questions about America, about democracy, about Elvis's views on politics. Elvis answers carefully. He's not political, never has been. He talks about his mother, his career, his love for his country. The interview ends. Müller thanks him, shakes his hand, leaves. 3 days later, Elvis meets Müller again. This time, Müller brings a gift, a watch, Swiss-made, expensive. Elvis hesitates. Müller insists. A token of appreciation. For the interview. Elvis accepts. He wears it once, then puts it in a drawer. He doesn't think much of it. But the CIA does, because Hans Müller is not a journalist. He's an intelligence officer. East German Stasi, the secret police. And the watch? The CIA suspects it contains a listening device. They never confirm this. They never examine the watch, but they document the gift, and they add it to Elvis's file. The file grows. April 1960, Elvis meets another foreign national, a woman this time. Name redacted, age 26, nationality, Polish. She works at a hotel in Frankfurt. She approaches Elvis at a bar. They talk, dance, spend time together. Nothing unusual. Except she asks questions. The same kind of questions Müller asked. About America, about politics, about Elvis's opinions. Elvis tells her the same things. He's not political. He loves his country. He's just a singer. The woman leaves Germany 2 weeks later. Destination, Warsaw. The CIA notes this. They add her to the file. They conclude, subject is a target of foreign intelligence interest. No evidence of cooperation or compromise. Recommend continued monitoring. Elvis has no idea. He's just trying to finish his service. Go home to Memphis. Resume his career. He's counting the days. May 1960. Elvis receives orders. He's being discharged. Honorable discharge. Date, March 5th, 1960. He returns to the United States. Memphis, Tennessee. Graceland, home. The surveillance doesn't stop. It shifts. Now, instead of Army intelligence, it's the CIA. Domestic operations. They watch who visits Graceland. They monitor his phone calls. They track his travel. Not constantly, but regularly. And whenever something unusual happens, the files document this. Elvis meets with a Soviet diplomat. Not intentionally. It happens at a party in Hollywood, a fundraiser for a children's hospital. Elvis is invited because he's famous. The diplomat is there because he's been invited by the host. They're introduced. They shake hands. They exchange pleasantries. 2 minutes of conversation, nothing significant. But the CIA is there, not physically, but through an informant, someone at the party who reports to the agency. The encounter is documented, added to the file. Elvis travels to Hawaii for a concert. The USS Arizona Benefit Concert, March 25th, 1961. He raises over $50,000 for a memorial. While in Hawaii, he meets a Japanese businessman, name redacted, age 52. They meet at a restaurant. The businessman is a fan, wants a photograph. Elvis obliges. They talk for 10 minutes. The businessman gives Elvis a gift, a silk scarf, traditional Japanese design. Elvis thanks him, puts it in his luggage, forgets about it. The CIA doesn't forget. They document the meeting. They identify the businessman. He's clean. No ties to foreign intelligence. But they document it anyway, because that's the job. Document everything. Assess later. Elvis makes a film, Fun in Acapulco, shot on location in Mexico, Acapulco. While there, he meets a Mexican government official, name redacted, position cultural attaché. The official invites Elvis to dinner, a gesture of goodwill. Mexico wants to maintain good relations with American celebrities. Elvis accepts. They dine at a restaurant overlooking the bay. The official talks about Mexican culture, art, music. He asks if Elvis would consider performing in Mexico City. Elvis says maybe. He'd have to check with his manager. The dinner ends. They part ways. The CIA documents the meeting. They investigate the official. He's legitimate. No ties to foreign intelligence. But again, they document it. Add it to the file. The pattern continues. Every foreign contact. Every international trip. Every meeting that involves someone from outside the United States. Documented, assessed, filed. Elvis never knows. The Beatles come to America. They want to meet Elvis. Their manager reaches out to Colonel Parker. Parker arranges it. August 27, 1965, Bel Air, California. Elvis's rented house on Perugia Way. The Beatles arrive. John, Paul, George, Ringo, plus their manager, Brian Epstein. They spend 3 hours together, talking, playing music, joking. It's a meeting of legends. 2 generations of rock and roll. The press never finds out. It's private. But the CIA knows. Because one of the Beatles' security team is a CIA informant. Not the Beatles' fault. Not Elvis's fault. Just how the world works in 1965. The meeting is documented. Not in detail. Just the fact that it happened. No threats identified, but documented nonetheless. Elvis marries Priscilla Beaulieu. May 1st, 1967. Las Vegas, Nevada. Aladdin Hotel. Private ceremony. Only 14 people attend. Family. Close friends. The CIA is not invited. But they document the marriage. They note Priscilla's background. Born in Brooklyn, raised in Germany. Met Elvis in Germany in 1959. She was 14, daughter of a U.S. Air Force officer, clean background, no ties to foreign intelligence. But they check. They always check. Elvis stages his comeback. The '68 comeback special, NBC, December 3rd, 1968. It's a triumph. Elvis proves he's still relevant, still powerful, still the king. The CIA watches. Not because of the special itself, but because of who attends the taping. Celebrities, politicians, foreign dignitaries, anyone who might use the event as a cover for something else. Nothing unusual happens, but the event is documented, added to the file. The file is now 89 pages. Elvis begins performing in Las Vegas, International Hotel, now the Westgate. He signs a 5-year contract, 2 shows a night, month-long residencies, twice a year. The shows are packed, fans from all over the world, including foreign nationals. The CIA monitors the audiences, not every show, but periodically. They're looking for patterns. Are certain individuals attending multiple shows? Are they making contact with Elvis? Are they trying to get backstage? Most of the time, nothing, just fans. But occasionally, someone raises a flag. A man from Romania attends 3 shows in 1 week. Name, redacted, age 41. He tries to get backstage. Security stops him. He leaves a note for Elvis. The note never reaches Elvis. Security hands it to hotel management. Hotel management contacts the FBI. The FBI contacts the CIA. The note is translated. It's a fan letter. Harmless. But the man is investigated. He's a diplomat. Romanian embassy. Washington, D.C., clean record. No ties to intelligence. But his presence is documented, added to Elvis's file. Quick thought. Have you ever wondered how many strangers know things about your life that you'll never know they know? Drop a comment. The surveillance continues. Elvis meets President Richard Nixon. December 21st, 1970. The White House, Oval Office. It's one of the most famous photographs in American history. Elvis in a purple velvet suit and gold belt. Nixon in a standard suit. They shake hands. Elvis offers to help the government. He wants to be a federal agent at large. He wants to help fight drug abuse. Nixon listens. He's amused. He gives Elvis a Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs badge. Honorary, not official. But Elvis treasures it. The meeting lasts 30 minutes. The CIA documents it, not because they distrust Elvis, but because that's protocol. Any civilian meeting with the president is documented, especially if that civilian has a history of foreign contacts. The documentation is brief, just the facts: date, time, location, duration, outcome, no assessment of threat because there is no threat. But it's documented. Elvis's marriage to Priscilla ends. They separate. She files for divorce. October 9th, 1973. The divorce is finalized. The CIA documents this, not because they care about Elvis's personal life, but because divorce can create vulnerability, financial stress, emotional instability. Vulnerability can be exploited by criminals, by foreign agents, by anyone. The CIA assesses no immediate threat. Subject's emotional state appears stable. Recommend routine monitoring. Translation: keep watching, but don't escalate. Elvis performs Aloha from Hawaii, January 14, 1973, via satellite. The first global concert broadcast. Over 1 billion people watch. Countries all over the world, including communist nations, China, Soviet Union, Cuba. The CIA monitors the broadcast arrangements. They ensure no foreign governments use the event as a cover for espionage. Nothing happens. The concert is a success. Elvis raises money for charity. The world watches a king at his peak. But behind the scenes, the CIA is there, watching, always watching. Elvis's health declines. He gains weight. He's exhausted. He's struggling. The press starts to notice. Rumors spread. Elvis is sick. Elvis is dying. Elvis is addicted to drugs. Some of it's true. Some of it's exaggerated. But it's all documented. The CIA notes changes in his behavior, not because they care about his health personally, but because vulnerability means risk. If Elvis is compromised, physically or mentally, he could be manipulated. They don't intervene. That's not their job. They just watch and document. The surveillance begins to wind down, not because Elvis is no longer a person of interest, but because priorities shift. The Cold War is changing. Détente between the U.S. and Soviet Union, relations improving. The CIA has bigger concerns: terrorism, Middle East, Latin America. Elvis Presley is no longer a high-priority target. The reports become less frequent, once a month, then once every few months, then once a year. The file stops growing, but it doesn't close. Because in intelligence work, files never close. They just go dormant. August 16, 1977. Elvis Presley dies. Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee. 2:30 p.m. He's found in his bathroom. Cardiac arrest. The official cause. The world mourns. Millions of fans devastated. The king is dead. The CIA documents his death. One final entry in the file. Date of death. Location. Cause. Then the file is archived, classified, locked away. For 15 years, it sits in a vault, unseen, forgotten. The Freedom of Information Act. A researcher requests Elvis Presley's government files. Routine request, they expect nothing. But the CIA responds. They release 347 pages, heavily redacted, names blacked out, details obscured. But enough remains, enough to piece together the story. The researcher publishes findings. The media picks it up. Headlines: CIA spied on Elvis for 15 years. The public is shocked. Why Elvis? What did they think he was doing? The CIA refuses to comment. They never explain the full reasoning, but the files tell the story. Elvis was watched because he had foreign contacts, because in the Cold War, anyone with foreign contacts was a potential risk. Not because he was guilty, not because he was dangerous, but because he was visible, famous, influential, and influence can be weaponized. The files reveal something else, something the CIA never intended to show. Elvis was never compromised, never recruited, never used. In 15 years of surveillance, they found nothing. No disloyalty, no subversion, no secrets passed, nothing. Elvis was exactly what he appeared to be, a singer, a soldier, an American. He loved his country. He helped his government when asked. He met the president. He raised money for charity. He entertained troops. He paid his taxes. He did everything right. And still, they watched him, because that's what governments do. They watch. They document. They protect. Even when there's nothing to protect against, more files are released, this time 120 additional pages, less redacted, more names visible, more details. Researchers dig deeper. They find reports about the watch Hans Mueller gave Elvis in 1960. The CIA did examine it. In 1963, 3 years after Elvis received it, they found nothing. No listening device, no tracking chip, just a watch, an expensive watch. But just a watch. Mueller was not Stasi. He was a journalist, exactly what he claimed. The CIA was wrong, but they never told Elvis. They just filed the report and moved on. The woman from Poland, also clean. Not an intelligence officer, just a hotel worker, who liked Elvis's music and wanted to meet him, that's all. The Romanian diplomat, a fan, nothing more. Every foreign contact the CIA investigated turned out to be innocent, every single one. But the surveillance continued for 15 years, because once a file is opened, it's hard to close. Because once someone is labeled a person of interest, that label sticks, even when there's no interest left. The last of Elvis's CIA files are released. Final batch, 67 pages, covering 1975 to 1977. The entries are sparse. A few lines per year. Subject continues performing. No foreign contacts reported. Health declining. No security concerns identified. Then the final entry. August 16th, 1977. Subject deceased. File closed. That's it. 15 years. Condensed into 2 words. File closed. But here's what the files don't say. They don't say how Elvis felt. Did he ever suspect? Did he ever feel watched? There's evidence he did. In 1970, Elvis told a friend he thought his phone was tapped. He was right. Not by the CIA, by the FBI. Different agency, same government. In 1974, Elvis told another friend he thought someone was following him. He was right again. Not always, but sometimes. The files don't document his fear, his paranoia, his sense that even in his own home he wasn't alone. They just document the facts. Cold, clinical, detached. That's intelligence work. No emotion, just data. But data about human beings, about their lives, their choices, their vulnerabilities. A former CIA agent gives an interview. He's 82 years old, dying of cancer. He worked on Elvis's case, one of many agents. He's asked why. Why did the CIA watch Elvis for so long? He pauses. Then he says, because we could. That's the truth. Not because Elvis was dangerous, not because he was a threat, but because the CIA had the resources, the authority, the mandate, and Elvis was visible, famous, easy to track. So they did. The agent dies 3 weeks later. His interview is one of the few first-hand accounts. Everyone else who worked the case is either dead or silent, bound by oaths, bound by classification, bound by duty. The story of Elvis and the CIA is a story about power, about how governments operate in the shadows, about how even the innocent are watched, not out of malice, but out of caution, out of fear, out of the belief that vigilance protects. But it also reveals something about Elvis. In 15 years of surveillance, they found nothing. Nothing except a man trying to live his life, trying to do his job, trying to be decent. He made mistakes. Everyone does. But he was never disloyal, never traitorous, never anything other than what he appeared to be, a singer from Memphis who loved his country. Even when that country didn't trust him, even when that country watched his every move, he kept going, he kept performing, he kept loving. And maybe that's the real story. Not what the CIA found, but what they didn't find. They didn't find a traitor. They found Elvis Presley. Human, flawed, real. And in the end, that's all he ever was. Today, the files sit in the National Archives. Anyone can request them, read them, see what the CIA saw. Most people don't. Most people don't care. But for those who do, the files tell a story about surveillance, about suspicion, about a government that watches its own citizens, not because those citizens did anything wrong, but because they might. Someday. Maybe. Elvis never knew the full extent of the surveillance, he suspected. But he never knew. And maybe that's for the best. Because knowing you're watched changes you. It makes you careful, guarded, less free. And Elvis, more than anything, valued freedom. The freedom to perform, to create, to live. The CIA took some of that away. Not intentionally, but they did. Every phone tap, every surveillance report, every documented meeting, it all added up to a life monitored, a life recorded, a life never truly private. But Elvis kept going until he couldn't anymore. And when he died, the surveillance ended. Finally. Quick thought, if you could read the government file on your life, would you? Or would you rather not know? Drop a comment. The story of Elvis and the CIA is not unique. Thousands of Americans were watched during the Cold War. Artists, musicians, actors, writers, anyone with influence, anyone who traveled abroad, anyone who met the wrong people or the right people at the wrong time. Most of them never knew. Their files sit in archives, forgotten, until someone requests them, and the truth comes out. Decades later, too late for apologies, too late for explanations, just truth, cold and documented. Elvis's legacy is his music, his films, his charisma, but it's also this: 347 pages in a CIA vault. Proof that even the king was not above suspicion, that fame does not grant immunity, that in the eyes of the government, everyone is a potential risk, until proven otherwise, and sometimes, not even then. If this story resonates with you, if you're curious about the hidden histories of the people we thought we knew, consider subscribing. There are more stories like this, more secrets waiting to be uncovered. More lives documented in files that were never meant to be seen. Elvis Presley, born January 8, 1935, died August 16, 1977, watched by the CIA for 15 years. For no good reason, except that he was famous, and foreign nationals liked him. And in the Cold War, that was enough. He deserved better. We all do. But the files don't care about what we deserve. They only care about what happened. And what happened is this: Elvis Presley was watched for 15 years by his own government, and he never did anything to deserve it, except be himself. And unfortunately, they don't make men like Elvis Presley anymore.